There's a reason why so many buyers end up focusing on the neighborhoods around Sky Ridge. It's in Lone Tree, even when it's not where they thought their search would end up. A lot of people start out comparing Highlands Ranch, Castle Rock, Parker, and all sorts of areas in the South Metro. They tour homes, they look at commute times, they're comparing neighborhoods, and they talk through what they want really in their life. Then somewhere in that process, Lone Tree becomes a factor and stands out. And it's not always because of one specific house. Usually, it's in the area. That is what makes this part of Lone Tree interesting. Buyers do not always put convenience at the top of their wish list, but once they experience it, they realize how much it changes their daily life. So today I want to talk about the area around Sky Ridge, what buyers are actually drawn to, what it feels like to live nearby, where the trade-offs show up, and how to decide whether this part of Lone Tree fits the way you want to live. Because this area does something really well. It makes life feel easier. And depending on your priorities, that can be a much bigger deal than people expect. When buyers say they want to live near Sky Ridge, they usually mean they don't want to live directly next to the hospital. What they're usually talking about is the broader area around Sky Ridge Medical Center, RidgeGate, Lyric, and surrounding Lone Tree neighborhoods that sit near major roads, services, and shopping, trails, access, and transit access. That matters because this section of Lone Tree is not defined by one amenity. It's working because several pieces are close together. You have I-25 nearby, Park Meadows is close, light rail is part of the conversation, the trails and the open spaces, they're accessible, restaurants, business centers, and medical services, and newer residential communities are all within reach. It's not busy in the way downtown feels, and it's not isolated in a way that some of the outer suburban areas feel. It's going to land somewhere in the middle, and that balance is exactly why buyers keep coming back. There's an intentional feel as to the way part of Lone Tree functions. Roads, services, and employment centers, recreation, and the residential pockets, they all work together to make daily life more manageable. So people may not know how to describe that when they first arrive, but they're going to feel it. That feeling often becomes a reason that they start giving Lone Tree some serious attention. The interesting part is that most buyers don't start by saying they want convenience. They usually tell me, I want the right house, or I want the right neighborhood, the right commute, or the right price point. But after they spend some time here, the conversation changes. They start noticing how easy it is to get around. A quick errand, it's not a production. Getting to work, shopping, medical services, or even the highway, it feels way more direct than even other parts of the metro. And over time, that's going to change your routine. And your routine is what you actually live with. A house can be beautiful, but if every small task takes more time than you expected, the home starts to carry more pressure than it really should. On the other hand, a location that makes daily life easier can become more valuable to you after you move in. That's what I see happening in and around Sky Ridge area. People may come for the access, but they stay because it removes a lot of the obstacles from the everyday life. Let's make it a little practical. Picture a normal weekday. You wake up, you leave the house, your day starts moving. If you work in and around the Tech Center, Meridian, or Inverness, or other employment areas along the South Metro area sides, being near Lone Tree can keep your routine a lot more efficient. But if your day takes you in different directions, I-25 access matters more than you expected. Now add your daily errands. Maybe you need some groceries, a quick run to the mall, Park Meadows. In some of those areas, those things and those stops require a little bit more planning. Around Sky Ridge, a lot of those pieces are already close. That doesn't mean traffic disappears, and it doesn't mean that every drive is perfect. This is still the Denver metro area, and people need to be realistic about it. But compared to with areas where every errand feels more spread out, Lone Tree and the location can make the day feel a little bit more contained. That's a different kind of value. It's not as emotional as mountain views or as obvious as a large backyard, but once you live with it, it might be a little hard to give up. Now, let's talk about who this area tends to work for. I wouldn't describe it necessarily by demographic. I would describe it about how people use their time. If your life involves a lot of movement, this area makes sense. Maybe you need the easy access to I-25. Maybe you care about being close to restaurants, shopping, but without that feeling of feeling like you live in the middle of downtown Denver. That buyer understands Lone Tree quickly. Another buyer who pays attention here is somebody that's going to relocate from out of state. Lone Tree can be easier to understand than some of the larger, more spread out areas. You arrive, you spend a little time nearby, and the routine starts to make sense. You're going to figure out where things are without needing months to decode the entire area. That is definitely useful during a relocation. You've already got plenty of decisions to make there. The housing, the timing, the moving logistics, and those lifestyle changes all hit at once. And an area that feels easy to understand can reduce some of that pressure. Another group that often notices this area are buyers that want lower maintenance and may not want the biggest yard. Instead, they're looking for that home base that makes life feel smoother. That's why the area around Sky Ridge can surprise people. They think they're shopping for a property type, but then they realize they're really shopping for ease. Now, That doesn't mean that this area is perfect for everyone. Every location is going to give you something, and they're going to ask for something. Near Sky Ridge, you may not get the largest home for the money, and you may not get the biggest lot. You may not get the same older, mature neighborhood feel, but the environment can feel more connected, more convenient. But that also means more activity nearby. The roads, the retail, the medical uses, it definitely all creates more movement and more time. For some people, that energy is a benefit. For others, it's absolutely not what they want. That is why convenience and community, they're not the same thing. You can live somewhere that was incredibly convenient and still realize you wanted something that was a little bit more of a traditional neighborhood. Maybe you wanted quieter residential streets, more separation, or a place where life revolves all around or more around the neighborhood. That buyer may still prefer Castle Rock, Parker, Highlands Ranch, or even a more residential pocket in the South Metro. Lone Tree is definitely not trying to be those places. That is part of its appeal. It has its own value proposition, and that value is access. The question is whether access solves problems in your life. If you're sitting across from me and trying to decide whether Sky Ridge area makes sense, I wouldn't start with the bedrooms and bathrooms. Those matter, but they are not the first filter. I would ask yourself, what parts of your week feel annoying right now? Maybe you're spending too much time in the car, driving around, or maybe you feel disconnected from places that you actually go and use. It's the way that all of these things begin to stack up. That's where Lone Tree can be of value. If convenience is reducing the number of little decisions you make every day, your life's gonna feel noticeably easier. But if you don't care about that and you're picky about more space, then Lone Tree may not give you enough of what you actually value. That is the honest comparison. Now, let's talk about something that buyers don't always expect. Lone Tree can feel more urban than some suburbs. It can definitely feel more convenient than Castle Rock or Parker, but definitely not as dense as Central Denver. That middle ground is where it finds its lane. You grab dinner, shop, meet up for some coffee, and you're still close to trails and open space. That balance can be harder to find than people think. A lot of buyers tend to think they need to choose between convenience and breathing room. This area doesn't give you the most extreme version of either of them. That's why buyers keep circling back. The area doesn't always win because it's the most exciting, and there is a difference. Exciting can get your attention during a showing. Functional makes your day better after you move in. Now, is the price worth paying more to be near this kind of convenience? It depends on whether you actually use the area it gives you. If you mostly stay home and prioritize square footage, a bigger home in another area may serve you better. If your life naturally involves movement, the value starts to make more sense. If you meet people often, move around the metro and travel more, or simply do not want every errand to take a plan, then the convenience becomes a part of the return. That's why two buyers can look at the same area and react totally differently. A buyer focused mainly on house size may not understand the premium, but a person who values time and access can see that immediately. That's why you have to evaluate the area through lifestyle, not just price. Let's compare a couple of options. Castle Rock often gives buyers more of that town identity. A little more topography, and in certain areas, more open space. The trade-off is that your access may feel different depending on where you live and where your daily life is taking you. Highlands Ranch, it offers a highly established master plan environment. It can feel more residential and settled, but not always immediately connected to commercial and medical concentration, like what Sky Ridge area has. Parker, it brings its own community feel. Newer and established pockets. For buyers who want that Parker identity, Lone Tree may feel too access driven. That's why you need to evaluate Sky Ridge and around the area honestly. It is not better because it's convenient. It's better for that buyer whose life improves because of that convenience. Now, here's what I would do if I were considering this area. I wouldn't just tour homes. I'd spend part of the day here, drive the roads, go to lunch, walk nearby. Then ask yourself, not just whether it looks nice, does it feel relieving to you? That is the word I hear when I talk to people who live around Lone Tree. They don't always describe it as exciting, they describe it as easy. It doesn't sound flashy, but it matters. After that move, ease becomes valuable. So if you're considering living around the Sky Ridge area, look beyond the listing photos. Where would you go for groceries? How quickly can you get to I-25? Those answers are going to tell you whether the area fits. At the end of the day, people move in and around the Sky Ridge area because the small things work. For the right buyer, those pieces change daily life more than expected. For somebody else, that might not be enough to outweigh the desire for more space. That is why the best decision is not whether or not Lone Tree is good. It is about whether or not a part of Lone Tree solves the right problems for you. In future videos, I'll keep breaking down Lone Tree, Castle Rock, Parker, Highlands Ranch, and all of the South Metro so you can understand how they actually live and work. Because the right location isn't always the biggest house or the obvious name. Sometimes it's the one that quietly makes your life better every single day.